Hello friends, I'm Saket Bansal. I run a company named Eisenbridge Consultancy Private Limited. I train people on project management, PMP as well as Agile. So I am like a traditional trainer who can train in both the methodologies. And today we are talking about when to use Scrum. I welcome you all to this special webinar, which is on a generic topic, but very much related with Agile and Scrum. So before we move forward, I would like to know your level, like where do you stand in your Scrum or Agile journey? So this I will, for that I am conducting a small poll and we will start just after that. So here is a poll where you need to tell me where do you stand in your Scrum or Agile journey? How familiar are you with Scrum? Because our rest of the presentation is all about where to use Scrum. Okay, some of you have already voted. Rest, please just cast your vote. Click. Okay, till now we are getting majority who are practicing Scrum, so they will find things very familiar. Yeah, they will feel that everywhere they can put Scrum. We have say 44% of our audience who are very new to Scrum. They just started reading about Scrum, and there is a second part, say 55% or 56% audience who have been practicing Scrum. So I think we will get a good feedback from the people who are already practicing Scrum, because they can tell how it is helping them or where do they find issues related to the same implementation. So let's move forward. So during the presentation, I will be taking 2 Q&A breaks. So whenever you get a question, just use your go to webinar panel, write your questions and just send it to me. During the Q&A break, I will take all these queries. So today we will talk about empirical process. The people who are practicing Scrum must be knowing that Scrum is an empirical process. We will talk a brief about Scrum because we are talking where to use Scrum. Then we will talk about Cynefin Framework. So this is a framework which is helpful to identify what type of process is suitable in a given situation. And then we will play some polls by which we will try to identify various scenarios and appropriate methodology for those scenarios. So this is an agenda for this particular session. So empirical process. Now, before we understand the empirical process, let us understand the defined process, because defined process is something which we all are familiar with. A process where we know how the inputs are getting converted into an output. A defined process follows a predefined steps and it generates an acceptable quality repetitively. So as many times you put those inputs, the steps which are defined in the process, they generate an acceptable quality output. You can think of a very stable environment where the variances are very less. You can put control limit on the output, and if something is going beyond that control limit or observation is breaking the control limit, then only you fear about going system out of control. At rest of the time, the system can work perfectly. The second part or a second dimension or a type of processes are empirical process. Now these are the processes where the process is not well defined. We don't know how these inputs are getting converted into outputs. Even we don't know what all inputs are needed. And we also don't know what is the exact output we are looking for. We do have a vision, but we don't know how to reach there. Like if you are creating, if I usually follow this particular example of using burgers and recipe. So if you are running a fast food restaurant and you know that this is my burger and this is how it has to be made, you are in a defined process. You can make the clear steps and your staff should be following it and producing burger of an acceptable quality in a given timeline. But the same fast food restaurant, if you are thinking of launching a new product, you are thinking of, let me start selling something else or a type of burger which can compete with other competitors. Now here you are creating a recipe. You don't know what would be the right composition or what kind of inputs you will need, and you don't know what would be the final taste of your product, and that's an empirical process. So the empirical processes are managed, controlled by way of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. How do you control the defined process? It's easy, because in a defined process we have a baseline outputs. We know that the burger should be produced in 60 seconds, and if it is taking more than 60 seconds, there is a problem. Or you can talk about range, it should take 50 to 70 seconds, and if it is taking more than 70 seconds, I know there is a problem. But since in empirical process you don't know those kind of baselines, then you just rely on looking inside the system. It has to be transparent. Since you do not have a historical database, so you inspect your own data, and then you adapt to it. Now the Scrum is an empirical process control mechanism for doing things. It's a project management framework which follows empirical process guidelines. So let's brief about Scrum before we move further. It's one of the Agile process. A lot of time we think that Scrum is the synonym of Agile. Yeah, Scrum is widely used Agile methodology or Agile process, but Agile is a collection of values and principles where Scrum provides us practices. It's one of the Agile methodology. It focuses on delivering things, high priority things sooner. So we are not thinking of the complete scope, but we are prioritizing the scope continuously and trying to deliver the top priority things sooner in the project life cycle. It focuses on repeated inspection and adoption cycle. So we do an iteration, we run a sprint, and then we inspect the outcome of the sprint in the way of looking at the working software. We also inspect the process which we are following in the way of doing retrospective, and then we adapt. We change our future course of action on the basis of learning of our first exploration. And in this process, business talks about the priorities, and team self-organize to deliver the given priority. So they balance, the business tells that this is important, and team finds it out how much and how best they can deliver that part of requirement. And there are good amount of advantages. If you follow Scrum, we get working software at the end of each iteration. Traditionally, we have been facing issue where we don't know about the software till very late in our development life cycle. We keep writing documents and documents, and we feel that we are on time, but when we start developing the real code, or when the build starts going in a test environment, we find that we are very behind schedule. So Scrum exposes the problem, it shows the progress, it gives the working deliverable sooner in the project life cycle. It helps us in flexibly or changing our plan as per the market condition. If the market priorities are changing, Scrum, since we are running small iterations, we can adapt to the market demand faster. It provides more motivation, more joyful environment, because people can see what they are working on. They can see the things getting executed and delivered. A lot of time when we are working in a traditional project, we keep waiting for a customer to see the product for years, and that creates sometimes confusion and frustration in the development team. It focuses on transparency and helps us in delivering things fast to the market. Now, a Cynefin Framework is a framework which is not made for Agile or project management theories. It's a generic framework which talks about exploring the relationship between various factors, man, people, context, and talks about that what kind of systems there could be and how communication, decision making, policy making, knowledge management should be done differently in a different type of systems. We should not be applying one solution to all. Now this framework talks about 4 or 5 categories of systems. Complex, where we don't know what we want to do, the things are emerging. The exact output is not yet defined. Complicated, where we know what we want to produce. We have a clear input-output relationship. We know what impacts what. We have a clear cause and effect relationship defined. But there are multiple answers. There are various ways of doing things. So in order to identify which way is most economical or the best, we need to do some kind of analysis. We need to analyze the data and then recommend, okay, this is the right way and this is how we should move forward. So those kind of systems are complicated. Simple, the burger is a simple system where you have data coming in. Whenever there is a problem, you can categorize those problems, or the type of work which is coming is also can be categorized. I am getting order for burger, I am getting order for French fries, and then you can categorize it and then you can provide the solution. So you get an input, you have a predefined path. On the basis of the situation, you categorize them and deliver them. Simple system. Chaotic. You don't know what will work. You are in a firefighting mode. You just have to deliver something. You need to make something working very soon. You are not interested in the right answer, but you just want to give some solution which can work, which can resolve the problem for a while. If you are working in that scenario, you are in chaotic area of this framework. And there could be a fifth area, which is disorder. Disorder is an area where you don't know where you are. You don't know, do you need a simple solution or you need a complex solution? So the point from disorder is better you find out soon which system is suitable for you and migrate to that direction. Now, a complex, chaotic and ordered. So simple and complicated are basically both are ordered system. We do have a defined process. The difference between these two is complicated has various ways of doing things and all looks good. You need to do a good amount of data analysis to find the best, but simple has only one right answer. You know that this is the right way of delivering burger. Simple system. Now, complex system are empirical system because their things are just emerging. You are delivering something which is very new. It requires creative and innovative approach. The steps needed in a complex system is you do some exploration, you do some probing, and on the basis of those exploration, you sense the outcomes. You try to understand how this system is reacting or behaving against those observations. For example, if you are following Scrum, you are producing some working software and then you are trying to identify the customer behavior, the technical behavior, and then adapting on the basis of how technology is reacting or how your team is capable of delivering things using that particular technology, or how the user expectations are moving from one direction to another on the basis of the probe or exploration you are conducting. So if you are dealing into a complex systems, you need a framework which can facilitate exploration, probe, then sensing, inspection, and then you can change your direction, respond. So if you are there, you are in a complex environment. Complicated domain, it is predictable. It is more predictable. The complex system is not predictable. The previous one was not predictable because you don't have a cause and effect relationship defined, but complicated systems are predictable. You do have a matrices available. You do have a control limits available. You do have a baseline data. When I say matrix is available, you do have a baseline data. You do know how your productivity or performance are for this type of work. But you have various answers. You know that there are various ways of doing things. And which one is the best, you need to analyze. And in order to identify the best, you keep sensing the situation and keep doing data analysis and keep changing your direction. So you have one possible way of doing things, but since there are various ways of doing things, you need to keep improving and keep experimenting that do we need to change the way to the better one. But you do have a clear defined relationship. Simple domain, stable, clear cause and effect relationship. You have a one correct answer. You can clearly take decision on the basis of fact. If you are in a complex system, you don't have facts. You just need to create them by exploring. But in a simple system, you do have your productivity data baseline, your sizing baseline, your requirements baselines, everything is clear. So it's a fact-based management. You need to just assess the situation, categorize it and do it. For example, if the new request is coming, you need to categorize it. Okay, is it for user interface? Is it for change of configuration? Is it for tuning the database? And okay, if this is the category, you have a predefined steps. Like if it is coming, this category is coming, this is how you need to respond. If category B is coming, this is how you have to respond. Think like a help desk system where they have defined a way of handling things. And on the basis of input request, they can categorize it and respond to it. If you are working in that stable environment, you are in a simple domain. Chaotic, firefighting. Nothing is working. You are just looking at a possible way of cooling down the things. You are not looking for the right answer. You are just looking for something which can just work. You don't know what will work. There is no relationship, there is no data. Everything is giving some problem. The customer is unhappy. And what do? You act. You use your judgment, you put your mind, and you just act. You are no more exploring. You are implementing things. You are acting. And on the basis of your acts, then you look at, is this thing working? If it is working, you keep proceeding in that given direction. If it is not, you act in a different way. So you act and then you sense how your actions are resulting or providing you an effects, and on that basis you change your future direction. Now these are the four primary type of domains which will fit in your project environment, and on the basis of where do you fit, you need to identify which methodology will work. Complex and chaotic has some similarities because both are sensing and responding, but in complex we are taking planned exploration. In chaotic we are just acting. There is no planned exploration. We just try something and then we sense and respond. But we cannot live long in chaotic system. Chaotic system has to be for a temporary duration. So if you are in a chaotic domain, you need to stabilize the thing and move to the complex domain where you can have some planning and project a future direction on the basis of given facts and figures. So if you are in chaotic state, you better move it to the complex state. But you will find lot of time we move from simple to chaotic directly, because that can happen when we try to apply a simple solution to a complex problem. We try to apply a very well-defined approach for providing a system or a solution which was not yet defined. And when we take that particular solution to the customer finds this is useless. And in that case, we just end up in chaotic state where everybody is dissatisfied and we need to look or do something to make this thing working. So we need to be very careful that there is a possibility of jumping or pushed from simple to direct chaotic if we try to apply a simple solution to a complex problem. And software development is rarely simple. You may have some other type of projects where the simple or steps can be defined, because in software a lot of interdependencies and communication and explicit implicit requirements are there. So usually nobody knows, if you are developing a software, what the output should be or could look like. Now there is a relationship or a similarities between a complicated and simple. As I said, The complicated gives you a big amount of data. Like you are trying to optimize the performance, you know there are various factors which can help in optimizing the response time of your website. Now here you have a set of parameters, set of data coming from your last say 1 month history, and you are trying to analyze which parameter you should touch. You know there are various parameters which can be tuned and will produce some output, but you are analyzing which one is the best, which one is the easiest. Simple, where you don't have to do this analysis. You get the thing, you categorize it. You already know there are 10 buckets. And the solution is coming on the basis of the category it falls in. So if you are getting a request, identify it's a hardware problem, QA problem, user education issue, data problem, and once you categorize them, then you know what is the solution. If the user education issue, you teach the user again or explain the steps over the phone. So that is a simple solution. Now, going forward, we will try to play some polls and try to identify in a given situation which particular methodology will work the best. If you have any questions, we can take them before starting those poll, or I start one poll and in parallel you can type your questions as well. I have 4 polls just to play with identification of approaches for given problem. So here we have the first one. Now we are finding that many of you are voting that Scrum can be used in all of the cases. Can someone try to explain me why do you want to use empirical or a Scrum process where the situation is very simple? For example, delivering a burger in a fast food restaurant. So do you need to show the burger before giving it to the customer? Does it look okay? Is it sound? Is it taste good? Is it acceptable to you? Then only pay the money. Do you want to do that? So why do you want to use a Scrum in a problem which is simple? Can somebody try to explain their view on this? Because my view is, yes, Scrum is good. It gives us transparency. It gives us flexibility of doing things. Customer get the running software, working software soon. But this is not about only software. If we have very defined process like fixing and help desk issues, where we know that this is the steps, you have been maintaining this software for a while and you keep getting production support issues, and you know that whenever this particular event comes, you need to manage this incident by clearing some of the data and reporting the problem back so they can take care of it while in their next release. So in that kind of environment, the Scrum may not add value. It may add more overheads because problem is defined. Doing retrospective, showing customers that this is how things will work may cause a good amount of rework or an incremental work to your team. Now, and especially, so this is how I think for the simple solutions, simple problems, you don't need Scrum. But when I'm trying to say simple, I believe development of new software or a new module is never simple, because we think that we know the requirement, but that is usually an illusion. Nobody knows the requirement till the time they see the system. So rather than assuming or wishing that yes, you have a clear-cut picture of the future software, better to be realistic and follow a complex domain and accept that yes, we need to explore, show, and then only we will know what is there. But if you have been maintaining the software, if you have been installing the same software again and again, in those cases you can follow a simple or a defined process. Now let us look at and the simple and say complicated, more or less the argument goes in the same way. When we are in a chaotic state, you need to take control. You don't have a time to do a sprint planning meeting. You cannot have a backlog. You don't know what you would be doing next moment. In those cases, you need to have a system which is driven by individuals. You need to have someone who will take all the war decisions. So you need president in that case, and president would be taking all the decisions and deciding what should you do next. So in that particular case, in a chaotic case, again the Scrum will not work, because situation is such complex that there has to be a person who is taking all the decisions. But if you manage the system well, if you accept that software development is not a simple problem, then you may not reach, or you may not end up in a chaotic state. So that is what I feel should be. Okay, let us play the second poll. So you are developing a product, a new product which will open a new market for you. Which methodology should you follow? A Scrum, Waterfall, or Kanban? Because it's a new project, you have never done it before, doing it first time, no baseline data, no clear requirement, but it is new. You do have a time to plan. You don't have to deliver tomorrow. You have a time. You can make some release plans. Till the time system is not complete, it won't be acceptable. The system must have minimum marketable features. You can't just make one feature and take it to the customer because it's a new product. So you must make minimum marketable features before you take it to your customer. So that is the case. So the good thing is nobody is voting for waterfall. Now the competition is between Scrum and Kanban. Now the people who have been practicing Scrum or who have been reading Agile methodologies, they may be aware of what the Kanban is. But the people who are very new, the Kanban is a way of doing things. It's again an Agile methodology. It's a thing where we manage our development through a Kanban board. So we define the workflow. We identify how the stages which would be followed in a given workflow, and then we follow those stages. So here are the results. Scrum 67%. And 33% is Kanban. Now, in a Kanban, we visualize the workflow, we identify the stages, for example, like analysis, development, test, deployment. So these are the stages, and every packet of a work or every request passes through these steps and at the end get delivered. I have some question, so let me see if it is related to this. Okay, so the question is explain why Scrum is not for complicated system but for complex system. So the complicated system is very near to the defined system or a simple system, but the quantum of data is too much. The type of Six Sigma kind of approach works well for complicated system. It is not like that you don't know what will work. You have things which have been working. You have input data, you have an output data. Now the only problem you are trying to identify is which combination you should use. Should you focus more on tuning the database, or you should focus more on improving the hardware? So here you don't have to show the result to the end user. The problem is well defined. The problem is well defined, and even the possible solution also exists. Just you need to find the best one. In case of complex system, the problem is not yet defined. You just have a vision. You just know that you want to make something working. But what exactly needed is not yet defined. So complicated systems are, you can think gradually, once we are done with the complex system, if we launch the product in a market, we will first move to the complicated system and then to the simple system. So there could be a shifting between simple to complicated, because once you have a good amount of data in a simple system, let's take an incident management process. So if you keep getting incident, you are managing through a simple process. But once you have a quantum of incidents and you are trying to identify root causes of all those incidents, a problem analysis when you are doing, you are moving towards complicated domain, where you are trying to identify which one is the root cause of this problem and how to fix that. So just let me know if you have a follow-up question. Till the time I am taking the next poll. So in this poll, we spoke about Scrum and Kanban. See, in a Kanban, both are agile, but Kanban is suitable for things where you need to deliver small packets, and every packet is a usable component for the end user. So if you have a running thing, if you have a base system ready and you are adding features on it, you may follow Kanban, because as you add a feature, the customer will start using it. But when there is nothing, you are working on a new product development, you do need to think about minimum marketable features. You need to estimate. You need to make some release plan. You need to follow a process of exploration and adaptation. And in that case, the Scrum is the ideal use. So it's the best on an ideal use case for implementing Scrum. So you can post your queries, and let me move to the third poll. Let me just post this poll, then I will talk about this particular point also. So here we have a poll, and till the time we are talking about this particular, you are voting here. So the question came is again the extension of complicated and complex, that a satellite project is complicated where Scrum is not good. We don't know satellite project is complicated or complex. Usually complicated project has good amount of data. So if he says that we have been launching satellites for a while, but the relationship is not that well defined, then we can map it to a complicated domain. Usual example for complicated domain where I feel easy to relate with is that where you have a good amount of data. You have been supporting system for a year. Now you are looking for improving that system. You are doing a root cause analysis of an accumulated data. You know that how the system is working, but you want to identify improvements in that. So that kind of domains fit well for complicated, because you know the system well, but there are various ways of improving it. There are multiple right answers. That case is a better example of complicated. Launching a satellite can depend upon the maturity of the organization. But yes, again, it won't be that flexible that we can launch the satellite every other day. So, and we can't experiment it by launching it after 2 iteration and again launching it after 4th iteration. So there would be a way of inspecting and adapting, but not showing the working prototype at the end of every iteration. The other dimension which we should look at is cost of change, a flexibility to change things. If you are in an aircraft project or in a satellite project, cost of change becomes higher. So your exploration cycles of flexibility will get reduced. So even if you are implementing Scrum values, inspecting, exploring, adapting, doing retrospective is always good. But you may not be able to give a potentially shippable product every 30 days. In a way, I tend to agree with this point, because the cost of change defines the systems. Okay, so final poll. Let us share the results. Okay, you are selling a software, Okay, this one. Now, in my view, this is a clear case of defined process. See, there is no firefighting. You don't have to follow a command and control here. You have been selling and installing this software for a while. There is a good possibility of making standard operating procedures. There is a good, because you are not customizing it. You are just visiting the site, installing it, giving a demo, following a checklist, getting a signature from the school administration, and coming back. So you can make a good defined installation process. And on the basis of that installation process, you can have a matrices which keeps collecting data. How many points were accepted? Okay, do you have an acceptance for this installation? If you have, it is done. Now, it does not mean that we don't have to improve it. When you have a good amount of data, you need to continuously improve your installation process, and that is where the complicated things comes into the picture. But it is no more empirical. You know what all it takes. You can have a clear defined guidelines. So in my view, this is a good case for defined process where things are predefined and people can execute. You can de-skill the work. Okay, so final poll. Now you made the system either following Scrum or following defined process, but finally when you went live, you are facing major problems. Client is threatening you to sue if his data, his business does not come back on track in next 24 hours. It requires a president intervention, and that is where you are in. Everything is confusing. You don't know what will work, what won't, and you need to work out of this situation. So this time we are in good agreement. Yeah, most of you believe that you need to identify a superhero who can take you through this phase, and you are at a chaotic phase. Nothing will work. No checklist, no process, no guideline is applicable, because you need to save money first. You need to just go live. And in this particular situation, you need to have a hero who can lead the team, and you stabilize the situation, and once it is stabilized, then you can move to complex or a defined process depending upon the situation you are in. But for this duration, you are in a chaotic state and you need someone to take decisions and pass it through. It was a generic topic, sometimes becomes complicated and controversial. I tried to keep it away from controversies. So thanks for joining in, and do join our LinkedIn or YouTube community. Thanks a lot.